Hello.
Welcome back to another episode.
It's love month.
It's love month.
I feel like one of those radio hosts. Hello, welcome to Slow Jam Sunday. I don't know. Anyway, hi everybody. Welcome to Historia, the podcast.
Did we say our names last
We
week?
never say our names. It's like once in a while. You usually remember, so I usually count on you.
Oh, well, I'm Jamie.
I'm Kylie. And we are here today with another love story. This one's iconic, but toxic, but
Soup's toxic.
it's a lot. Let's just say researching took a long time.
It's a very heavy one.
Yeah, I didn't realize it would take so long to research it, but
I should have warned you.
well, I think you did, but I was just like, no, I can do it in one part. And then I was like, I have 50 pages of notes, so this is a two-parter.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say pages, it's not actual pages, it's on my iPad, so it's not like, it'd probably be like, I don't know, 15 pages of actual paper. But anyway, I know my limit. Like, I know once I hit 20, I know that's a one part.
Yeah.
So if I hit more than that, then I'm like, it's a two-parter. So we're going to do two parts here. Did I even tell them what we're talking about?
No.
We're talking about Bonnie and Clyde.
Woo-hoo.
I can't believe we haven't covered this yet. Like, it's just, I don't know.
I mean, like, I feel like this is the perfect time because we're talking about all different types of love this month.
That's true. And even though, like, I've listened to a lot of true crime and I don't feel like people really cover Bonnie and Clyde that much.
There's two.
Yeah. But it's not, like, commonly talked about, I feel like.
No, because it's more, a lot of people see it as more like historical.
Right.
In that sense, but it is very true crime because they were criminals.
Yeah. So, all my information came from FBI.gov. that provided some good stuff. Thoughtco.com and American Experience Films. It was a PBS documentary.
Oh, nice.
I learned all kinds of things. So, and they had a lot of pictures too, and like family members that they interviewed. So that's on YouTube if y'all want to check it out. I love a documentary because I fall asleep if I read too much. So I watch a documentary and then I research while I'm watching it. There's a lot of things going on in my brain at once. Anyway, let's talk about the two criminals who loved each other more than anything in the world. The first part is going to be about like their childhoods and kind of how they met. And then the second part is going to be all about the crimes and the chaos that ensued.
Okay.
So we're going to start talking about the couple who went on a 2-year crime spree together. So we're going to start with Mr. Clyde. His middle name was Chestnut.
That's so weird.
But also then he was like, it's Champion. I'm not Chestnut. So then he changed it to Champion. So sometimes you'll see Clyde Champion Barrow. Other times you'll see Clyde Chestnut Barrow. I'm calling him Chestnut. I think that might be his nickname. So he was born in Ernest, Texas on March 24th, 1909. And he was one of 7 children. Their parents were farmers, like a lot of people back then. In 1925... so I'm already going all the way to when he's 16, just because there's not a lot that really happens in their childhood.
It's really hard to get documentation on that kind of stuff.
I couldn't find any information, but like the only thing I could find was that they were a happy family. They were really close. There was not like any toxicity really.
Yeah.
So in 1925, the Barrows followed what every other farmer was doing, and they moved to the cities in search of work. That's kind of what everyone started doing. They kind of started going away from farming because they're like, we need money. And so they moved to the Dallas area. So they had everything that they owned packed in a small cart drawn by a horse. The family was very poor throughout his entire life, and that's kind of what led to crime for both Bonnie and Clyde. You're going to see is the poverty, which will be a huge topic we'll talk about here. But they were super close no matter how much money they didn't have. They didn't really care. Like, they were just like so close as a family, and they just made it work. So they finally settled in the outskirts of Dallas because they couldn't afford the actual city. And they were kind of in a high poverty area known as the Devil's Back Porch, which that itself does not sound like a good place to live. So he grew up in like an actual slum area. They were actually in a like little campground is where they lived, by the bank of a river. So whenever they stepped out, it was just mud.
Oh.
It just was a rough situation. They had one water well, and there was a ton of families that lived over there. And there were a couple outhouses too. But just imagine having to share that with a bunch of families.
I would die.
Yeah. So it was a pretty rough situation, but they camped out and they lived out of their wagon with their mule, and that was just life. I was like, okay. So from a young age, Clyde, he's kind of has this outlook for his future, and he's like, there's not much hope for me at this point. Like, I don't know what I can do with this situation. So
it's hard.
Yeah. And you have to make a decision. Like, do you want to stay like this and just accept it? Or do you want to try to make better for yourself?
Well, even like back then, it's hard to be up and coming, like to really make yourself something. Like, it's hard if you're starting from the bottom.
Right.
Like, especially then, like most of the people who were successful came from more of the wealthy families who are the ones that created stuff. It's very rare that you find someone who is like dirt poor.
Right. And able to rise up.
Yeah.
He thinks he'll be poor and hungry forever. So just to kind of give you the image, he was 5'6", around 130 pounds. So he's always a little guy.
He's so tiny.
I know. He's a little guy. He was super smart and energetic. People always thought he was very outgoing. He always had a lot of energy, and he was just really good in school. Like, he was just really smart when he was able to go to school. So he began to kind of think about, what is life like on the other side of Dallas? So he's sitting there going, I kind of want to know what's on the other side of the river, because they can kind of see the city. And he just starts gaining this curiosity. And he's like, maybe one day I could be on that side. And so then he starts kind of developing this idea that he does want to create a better life in any way that he can. So this was a life he could only dream of. Like, there was really no possibility, at least in this time, where he would be able to make that happen. But he would see people like in their fancy suits, and he just desired that life. He wanted to be able to walk around in a fancy suit, with a briefcase and just like,
a bowler hat.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what he wanted. Like, that was what he was kind of just like idealizing, basically. He wasn't super interested in like doing the types of hard labor that a lot of other men did. And he was just like, no, I don't want that life. Like, I want something better.
Yeah.
He loved music. He actually wanted to be a musician. He played guitar and the saxophone. Well, he was trying to play them. It didn't always go well for him. But he did. He wanted to be a musician. So unfortunately, there was not much that came from that. So he kind of gave up on that dream.
Imagine if he was.
I know. It would be quite the story.
Damn.
I know. So Clyde had an older brother, and his name was Buck. Well, that was his like nickname. And Buck was not a good influence on him. So, yeah, Buck already had this life, and he was settled into a life of petty crime. It was just like stealing people's chickens. Like, it wasn't anything too intense.
What?
He literally stole people's chickens.
I mean, you get nutrition off of that.
Right. And so then he would he would just steal like those types of things. It wasn't anything too serious. But Clyde saw that and was like, okay, I think I could help with that. I think I'd be good at that.
It's probably also to one-up him.
Right. And so then they started kind of just like, as they started stealing things like chickens, then they turned it into more armed robbery. So it kind of escalated pretty quickly.
Yep.
But he was only 16 at the time when he started all of this. And so by the time he was 17, he already had some pretty good techniques down. He kind of started getting his style down.
Yeah. Well, I'm surprised he didn't start younger.
I know, right? And this was right when the electric starter system was put in cars for the first time. And so Buck was like, okay, these are better made cars. We're going to have to find ways around it. Mm-hmm. And so they actually learned how to hotwire them. And that was kind of the biggest thing they were known for, was stealing cars.
That's so wild.
Yeah. And Clyde was just like, there's nothing wrong with stealing cars. Like, I'm just trying to create a job for myself. Like, he didn't see it as like, I want to ruin everyone's life. I want to be a criminal. Like, he didn't see it like that in his eyes. And in a lot of people's eyes, they were just trying to have a job.
Yeah.
And that's really all it was to them.
Well, would they sell these cars?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that probably puts food on your table for
right.
at least a couple weeks.
Yeah, and they just wanted to provide for their family. Like, they genuinely cared about them. And
yeah.
again, it was just like criminals were a big thing during that time because no one had money. Like, what are you going to do?
It's prime crime time.
Yeah, prime crime time. And so they felt like this was the only way that they could get out of their rough situation. Mm-hmm. There's really no other way around it. So he began drawing the attention of local police by the time he was in his 20s. They started kind of catching on to him and noticing him. And so in November 1929, Clyde Buck and the accomplice broke into an auto shop. And the local law enforcement spotted them trying to flee, and they started opening fire on them. They ended up catching Buck, but Clyde ran back home. One thing you're going to learn, Clyde is very good at running away and driving away.
Well, he's probably very fast.
He is, yeah. And that's really what he was known for, like how speedy he was and how quick he was able to get out of situations.
I am Speed.
He's Lightning McQueen. But Buck unfortunately got arrested.
Lightning McQueen Clyde. Lightning McClyde.
Wait, why do I feel like Buck is like Mater? Just the name.
They're cars.
Yeah. They're cars. Oh my god, this is getting weird. This is what happens when we record at night. So being quote unquote somebody and getting money for stealing cars was worth it to him. He just wanted to be known for something. He wanted to be special. He didn't want to just be that poor kid who had nothing going for him. So in 1930, he would meet a young girl who shared a passion for a better life. We're going to talk about that young girl. Her name is Bonnie Elizabeth Parker, also known as Bonbon. Just kidding. That's a nickname I gave her. Chestnut and Bonbon.
Oh, God. Sounds like chocolates.
It does. Okay, sorry. She was born October 1st, 1910, in a small town in Texas. She was the second of 3 children. And when she was 4, her father unexpectedly died. So they ended up moving close to the Dallas slums.
So she's a middle child.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Middle child vibes.
Got no attention.
Yeah. So her mom actually raised all 3 of the kids by herself. They had money from their dad, but when their dad died, they lost it all. So they had nothing after that.
They probably didn't have any life insurance because I don't even think that was a thing.
No, and because he died so unexpectedly, it's not like there was probably not even a will, anything like that. So she had to just kind of make it work. And so she moved them to a cheaper area in poverty and raised them by herself. She was a great mom to them. They all highly respect her. I think it was Bonnie's sister's kid was talking about it in the documentary. So it was kind of cool to hear her perspective. But she was always saying how her mom was always talking good about their mom, basically. Yeah. Never did anything bad. She was just a genuinely sweet woman. Mm-hmm. And so her mom really raised the kids to believe that they were better than their situation. They're better than their surroundings. She didn't want them to make that their worth. Yeah. She wanted them to kind of focus on other things, like their talents and different things. But they ended up, finding a good spot to live with their grandma. So they were living with her for a while. And just to give you a perspective of Bonnie, Clyde is small, but Bonnie is too. She was only 4'11", 90 pounds.
That is so wild. You have these 2
tiny people.
Tiny people, but they committed these series of crimes.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
And face-offs with the cops.
Yeah.
That blows my mind.
I know. It's so funny. Bonbon and Chestnut taking over the world.
You look at the pictures and they always look so much taller, and then
it's because they're both short.
Yeah. You're just shit.
He's only 7 inches taller than her.
If they took a group photo with everybody else, you'd probably be like, whoa.
Yeah, there are some pictures where you can definitely see. Mm-hmm. But she was pretty. She had blue eyes, strawberry blonde hair. She kind of had the look that was going around. But she was a nerd, sort of. She was really passionate about learning and really excelled in school. She also loved to sing and dance. And loved writing poetry. That is one thing she is known for. You can look up all her poems and they all have meaning. And it's just, they're really good. Go look them up. I was reading them all and I was like, wow.
She had potential and she ruined it.
Well, and she wrote a lot about their crimes and about how much she loved Clyde. And it's just really cool to see those two. So just like Clyde, she had this desire to escape poverty and to want a better life, which can you blame them? No, not really, right? So she would go to the downtown Dallas area, and she was obsessed with the picture shows and going to movies. And she started developing this infatuation for film and for the way that she saw actors just being able to turn into somebody else. And so I'm really surprised she didn't want to pursue acting, because that was really kind of what led her to wanting a different life.
Well, I'm wondering if like that she kind of changed herself for him.
Yeah, I think because really when we look at their whole story, it is a movie. Like we're going to talk about it later, but like I think she really thought she was in a movie.
Yeah.
And so she really loved the idea of like being able to reinvent yourself. And you see that a lot in movies. So in 1926, when she was 15 years old, she dropped out of school to marry her boyfriend, Roy Thornton. That's a hard name to say, Thornton. He was a thief. Okay. And she actually ended up getting a tattoo of Roy's name on her thigh, which back then, this was scandalous. Like, you did not get tattoos, especially on your thigh.
No, you were getting pretty much he was marking her.
Right. Yeah. It was a little sketchy. So yeah, she obviously never got rid of it. She had the tattoo until she died.
Did she at least cross it out? Put Clyde on top. Cross out his name, put Clyde.
I mean, she dies in about 8 years, so she doesn't have a lot of time. Or no, not even. 6 years, so.
Yeesh.
Yeah, I think. I don't know. I can't do math right now.
They're so young.
They were really young, yeah. So Roy starts randomly leaving and not telling her where he's going. And every time that she tries to ask him where he went, he beats her. It was just not a good situation.
No. Toxic love.
Yeah. And so after the third time of him leaving her, he never returned.
Oh, shit.
He ended up being charged with robbery.
Okay.
And he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. And so she's just like, okay, I guess I'm just going to go back to my parents' house and go live with them again. She's still a teenager. So
did they ever get divorced?
Nope.
Oh.
Yeah. So she would write poems about like her love for Roy and how like, it just didn't work out. And now she's back in poverty. And she's talking about how she's trapped there. Can't get out. Mm-hmm. They never were legally divorced. She worked as a waitress, but was unemployed because of the Great Depression at the end of 1929. And on January 5th, 1930, she ended up meeting Mr. Clyde Chestnut Barrow. This was just the guy that she wanted. He was dressed in nice clothes because he's starting to be able to afford those suits he always wanted.
Because he's selling cars
that
he stole.
Exactly. He had a new car that was stolen.
Just put different plates.
Yeah. He had lots of money. That was probably stolen. And he was attractive. I don't think you can steal that one. And so she saw him and she was like, sparks flew the second they met each other on both ends. They both like were just like instantly like,
it's like
whoa.
Slow motion.
Yeah.
Of their eyes locking.
Exactly. They actually ended up meeting at a mutual friend's house, and that's kind of how they connected. So a few weeks later, it was probably criminal. A few weeks later, Clyde was sentenced to 2 years in prison for a burglary.
Wow.
And this was just a few weeks later, but they like started dating immediately. Back, it was like courting, whatever. And so Bonnie was like, oh no, what am I gonna do? She's like freaking out. And he was sent to a county jail in Waco, Texas.
Ugh, Waco.
Yeah. And so she visits him and she's like, I miss you, Clyde. And he's like, I miss you too, Bon Bon.
Honestly, I would be surprised if we called her that.
But yeah, probably Bon Bon. I miss you, Chestnut.
Jessie.
Okay. And so then he's like, wait, I have an idea. There's a gun in my house. Well, he wrote this down on a piece of paper. So she was visiting him in jail and he wrote this down and then gave it to her. And it was this whole plan about how he knew where a gun was. And so he has this idea for her to bring the gun to the prison so that he can escape. And so he slipped her the note and she was like, got it. Okay, cool. And so the note ended with, "You are the sweetest baby in the world to me."
Oh, God.
And so she was like, "Aw."
She kind of is a baby.
True. She's only like 19 at this point. I think he was 21. So 21. So she's willing to break the law and help him because she thinks that's the kind of daring thing that would happen in movies. She's like, this is just like a movie. How exciting. And so she ended up hiding the gun under her dress, which I'm kind of like, so like in your, it must have been in her like underwear. Cause you know, underwear back then was like,
or stockings,
like a diaper. Yeah, that's true. Because now she's bringing him the gun in the jail. She's now his accomplice.
Well, you know, at this point, the security guards aren't like checking them.
Right.
Yeah. That's like a naughty thing to do.
Right. So the escape plan worked. Clyde and 2 more prisoners escaped the Waco jail that night. They're Waco. But unfortunately, he was recaptured a week later and sentenced to 14 years in the brutal Eastham prison farm near Weldon, Texas.
Oh my God.
This place is wild, but we'll talk about it in a second. So after this happened, Bonnie was crushed. She's like, my poor Clyde, my chestnut boy, my little chessy boy. I miss him so much. And so she returned to her mother in West Dallas, while Clyde was on his way to a place super violent and untamed. This was the most, this is where all of the violent criminals went, like the worst of the worst. And so he arrived there on April 21st. He went into a state prison that's not meant to rehabilitate prisoners. It was meant to make them feel like they're slaves.
Do any of them do
right.
that?
I know. So they would have to work all day from sunup to sundown and, you know, digging, whatever they were told to do. Clyde specifically worked in the cotton field. So he was doing all of that, and the armed guards would come by on horses and like scream at them. Go faster! I don't know. And it was just really brutal and unbearable. It's just really not the best idea. Like, how is this helping them?
Literally, it's not.
You're making them more aggressive, more angry. Like, it's just so stupid. So they barely had any breaks. They would get like 1 glass of water. They'd have like a 5-minute water break like every few hours. And then they'd give them some stale bread.
Ew.
Yeah. And they were beaten if they step out of line, or sometimes just for no reason. They would just be like, come here.
Oh my God.
So, oh yeah, trigger warning. There's abuse. Especially coming up shortly. There's some sexual assault. So just a trigger warning. But nowadays, I actually looked this up because I was curious, like how the prison is now. The prison is now called Wainwright Unit. And this is where inmates do agricultural work, but it's not as harsh as it used to be. Obviously, you can't have the slavery.
No, that would fuel a huge fire.
Yeah, but they do put them to work and like work in farms, which I feel like is fine. Like, might as well help out some way. But okay. So, one inmate, his name was Ed Crowder. He was 6 foot tall, 200 pounds. Just imagine that compared to Clyde.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And so he decides he's going to control Clyde and ends up sexually assaulting him many times.
Oh my God.
People would just walk by and be like, meh, it's prison. You know, like, who cares? And so on October 29th, 1931, Clyde wanted to put an end to the abuse from Ed. So what he did is he snuck a piece of galvanized pipe into the building and lured Ed to the bathroom, where he cut his head open with the pipe.
Holy shit.
Yeah. And Crowder instantly died, obviously.
Yeah.
But this was kind of not cool. But like another inmate saw this and was like, bro, I'll take the blame, because he was already in prison for life.
Yeah.
So he's like, it's not a problem, bro. You don't need to be here longer than you need to.
That's wild.
I know. So he ended up taking the blame. Like, Clyde just gets away with so much. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But he was still stuck there. Like, even though, you know, Ed is gone, he's still stuck there. And he's starting to lose his mind. And he's really starting to, like, become more aggressive and become more of wanting to be a criminal. It's doing the opposite of what it's supposed to be. So he actually asked another inmate to use an axe to cut off 2 of his toes. And this happened.
Why?
I think he just wanted to feel something.
I'm guessing to go to the infirmary just to get a break.
Yeah, I think that's what it was, because that's what happened. Mm-hmm. He ended up going to the infirmary, and now he's not working in the field. Oh, geez. What did I do? Okay, there we go. So his mother, in the meantime, is trying to get him out of jail. Mm-hmm. And so she actually petitioned the governor to release Clyde. They were using paroles a lot during that time because they didn't want overcrowding in the jails. So they're like, sure, yeah, no problem. It was a lot easier to get out. So Clyde left prison 6 days later on February 2nd, 1932. But unfortunately, due to the fact that he had someone throw an axe at his foot, he now had a limp for the rest of his life.
Not that long, though.
Yeah. And if you see if you see pictures of him standing, you can kind of notice he's like more on one side.
Yeah.
So the prison made him 10 times more violent than he used to be. He told his parents that they would have to kill him before he'd go back there. He's like, I don't care what happens. I don't care who I have to kill. I am not going back to prison.
Shit.
And he stuck to this until his death. So after he came out of prison in 1932, the true crime era in America had officially started. During the Great Depression, people found the government to be the bad guys. Mm-hmm. And so they were kind of turning on them because they thought the government was turning on them as well. And so they actually were like infatuated by these criminals, and they thought the criminals were like the heroes. Yeah. They were like, we're cool with them. So we had many gangsters that represented someone born in poverty and wanting a way to change their fate, which was through violence. This was socially acceptable to light gangsters because they were successful at things that not everyone could do. It was kind of like admirable. So in the spring of 1932, Bonnie and Clyde were reunited to resume their life together. So because jobs were so scarce, living in society was very rough. And so Clyde couldn't hold a job. And so he's like, well, I guess I'm just going to be a robber at this point. And so when his foot healed, he was back out on the streets. Bonnie decided to go with him to an armed robbery, and the Barrow Gang was to rob a hardware store. The Barrow Gang kind of changes throughout the next few years, but all of the members that are in it eventually are Ray Hamilton, W.D. Jones, Buck Barrow, Blanche Barrow, Henry Methrin, and Bonnie and Clyde. So at this point, Hamilton is with them, and I think Jones as well. Okay. And then just them. Jones is pretty much with them throughout the whole thing. So at this point, his brother's not in it yet.
Okay.
So Bonnie stayed in the car during the robbery, but she was the one who ended up getting captured and put in Kaufman, Texas jail. Clyde got away, as he does. And so she's sitting in jail and she's like, oh. And so she wrote a poem about a jilted girlfriend trying to win her boyfriend back. She thought she'd die in the prison. And so she wrote this very dramatic poem about it.
Wow.
And then she starts writing about how she is ready for a life of crime and she's ready to go down with Clyde. So her mom would read her poetry and be like, oh, my poor baby. She's lost. What are we going to do with her? And so she's noticing how much her daughter has changed over this one guy. So Bonnie thinks that honor means sticking by your man's side no matter what. Mm-hmm. She was so loyal to him. And in June, she was set free for lack of evidence. They didn't believe that any woman would choose to accompany criminals of her own volition. Of course she did. And while she was in jail, Clyde and Hamilton staged another robbery in April 1932. Something went wrong and they ended up killing the general store's owner, John Butcher, by shooting him. Bonnie had the choice to stay with Clyde for life on the run or leave him and start fresh. Like, she could have easily just gotten out, once she's out of jail, start fresh.
Yep.
But instead, she was like,
She's obsessed.
Yeah, she loved this guy. And she knew that being with Clyde meant that she would die soon. Like, they're not going to live long because once they're caught, they're dead. Because Clyde's not going back to jail. Mm-hmm. So he's going to do whatever he needs to do. And so she kind of just vowed to never return to prison as well and to be with him and follow his direction.
Well, I mean, at that point, like, even starting fresh, she's like, I'm going to be
right
in poverty again.
There's not much going for her in that direction. And so she has this man who loves her or going back into nothing. So she ended up remaining loyal to him until the end. And that's where I was going to stop. Because the next part is all about the many crimes that they commit together. I will give her the fact that she is one loyal girl.
Yeah.
My God. She does not give up.
It doesn't sound like it.
But that's part 1.
Ooh, I'm excited for part 2.
Oh, yeah. Part 2 gets wild.
Yay.
There's lots that happens. So, yeah.
Where can you find us?
You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Historia the Podcast. You can email us at historiathepodcast@gmail.com. We'll see you for part 2.
Yes.
Coming out very soon.
Yeah, well.
Okay, goodbye.
Bye.